Ethan Walker was about to jump when a poor boy said something that changed everything. The billionaire lost everything in 48H on the Golden Gate Bridge. 8-year-old Noah offered his last chocolate. Every life is a light. What came next will shock you. The wind cut across Ethan Walker's face like broken glass as he gripped the cold metal railing of the Golden Gate Bridge. Below, 67 meters of empty air separated him from the dark. Churning waters of San Francisco Bay, his fingers, numb from November cold, trembled against the rust-flecked steel. 48 hours ago, he'd been worth $2 billion. Now he couldn't buy a sandwich without his accounts freezing mid-transaction. The memory played on loop, FBI agents at 6 a.m., battering ram against mahogany doors, cameras already positioned outside his Pacific Heights penthouse like vultures circling carrion. His colleagues at Walker Technologies had averted their eyes as federal agents escorted him out in handcuffs, their faces carefully neutral, already calculating how to distance themselves from the scandal. The headlines screamed from every screen. Tech CEO accused of massive fraud, $500 million scheme ruins investors. But Ethan hadn't done it. Logan Pierce had, his best friend since Stanford, his business partner for 12 years, the man who'd been his best man, who'd sworn brotherhood over expensive scotch in dorm rooms and boardrooms alike. Logan had constructed an elaborate insider trading operation, using Ethan's credentials, forging his signatures, building a shield of deniability while he siphoned millions through offshore accounts. Now Logan was in Napa Valley, probably getting a massage, and Ethan was here. His phone had died hours ago. Its final notification an email from Amanda's attorney, his wife, ex-wife now. Apparently wanted a divorce. She'd already moved in with Thomas Keller, one of the investors Ethan had supposedly defrauded. The irony would have been funny if it didn't feel like swallowing shards of mirror. Dr. Helena Suarez, his therapist, had left 3 voicemails. He'd deleted them without listening. The penthouse sat empty behind him, furniture frozen by federal seizure orders. He'd driven his Porsche, not yet confiscated, to this bridge, parked illegally and walked until the railing seemed to whisper promises of relief. Tourists took selfies 30 feet away, laughing. A jogger passed without glancing up. In a city of millions, Ethan Walker had never felt more invisible. He climbed onto the lower rail, then pulled himself onto the upper barrier. The metal was slick with coastal moisture. His leather dress shoes, the last remnant of his former life, slipped slightly. He steadied himself. Looking down, the water looked almost peaceful from here. Quick, final. He closed his eyes. "Mister, what are you doing up there?" The voice was small, high-pitched, genuinely frightened. Ethan's eyes snapped open. A few yards away stood a boy, maybe 8 years old, skinny beneath a faded Golden State Warriors hoodie. He clutched a cardboard box filled with Hershey's chocolate bars, his dark eyes wide with concern that seemed far too mature for his age. "Go home, kid," Ethan said, his voice rough from disuse. "This doesn't concern you." The boy took a step closer. "It does, though, 'cause if you jump, someone out there loses the person they might need the most." Ethan stared. "Who was this child?" "You don't know anything about me," he said. "I know you're hurting." The boy's voice cracked slightly. "My mum died last year. I wanted to give up too. Wanted to just stop." Something in Ethan's chest tightened painfully. "But my grandma said something I can't forget." The boy swallowed hard. "She said every person's life is a light. If we turn ours off, the world gets darker for everyone else, and my mom wouldn't want me making the world darker." Tears, the first Ethan had allowed himself in 2 days, burned down his frozen cheeks. His grip on the railing loosened. Carefully, shakily, he climbed back down. His legs almost gave out when his feet touched concrete. The boy rushed forward, grabbing his arm with surprising strength for someone so small. They stood there, a disgraced billionaire and a child stranger, while the bridge hummed with traffic and wind. "What's your name?" Ethan managed. "Noah Carter." The boy smiled tentatively. "What's yours?" "Ethan. Ethan Walker." Noah's eyes widened. "The man from TV, the one who lost everything." Shame flooded through Ethan, hot and acidic. He nodded, but Noah's expression didn't change to disgust or fear. Instead, something like understanding crossed his young face. "Then we're kind of the same. I lost everything too when Mom died. But Grandma says when you lose everything, there's finally space to build something real." Ethan couldn't speak. He took the chocolate bar Noah offered with trembling hands. My last one was going to be my dinner, and the sweetness mixing with his salt tears tasted like something he couldn't name. Hope, maybe, or just the kindness of strangers. "Come eat with us," Noah said. "Grandma always makes too much food anyway, and you look like you need a real meal." Ethan thought of his empty penthouse, his dead phone, the cold water below that had been calling his name. Then he looked at this boy who'd lost his mother but still had light in his eyes. "Okay," he whispered. They walked together off the bridge, away from the edge, toward Tenderloin's crowded streets. Noah chattered about school, about selling chocolate to help with rent, about his grandmother's cooking. Ethan barely heard the words over the pounding of his heart, the rhythm that meant he was still alive, still breathing, still here. He didn't know it yet, but this moment, this child's intervention, would lead him to the truth, to evidence that could destroy Logan Pierce and the network of corruption he'd built, to a makeshift family in a cramped apartment, to justice for a woman named Rebecca Carter, who died trying to expose the same lies, and to something Ethan had spent his whole life building empires to avoid. Genuine human connection. But for now, he just followed an 8-year-old boy through the San Francisco fog, clutching a chocolate bar, and tried to remember how to breathe. The apartment building in Tenderloin looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and stubborn hope. 3 flights of narrow stairs groaned under their weight as Noah led the way, his small hand gripping the unstable railing. The walls bore layers of graffiti, some artistic, most profane. The smell hit Ethan in waves. Urine, garbage, cooking spices, desperation. It was nothing like Pacific Heights. Noah knocked a specific pattern on door 3C. Too quick, one slow, too quick. A woman's voice, strong despite its age, called out, "That you, baby?" "Yeah, Grandma, and I brought someone." The door opened to reveal a black woman in her late 60s, grey hair pulled into a neat bun, floral apron over a church dress. Reading glasses hung from a beaded chain around her neck. Her eyes, sharp, assessing, missing nothing, swept over Ethan from head to toe. "Who's this man, Noah?" "He needed help, Grandma, like we needed help after Mom." Her expression hardened. "We don't bring strangers home." "I understand." "Ma'am," Ethan said quickly, "I'll go. I'm sorry to—" "He was gonna jump off the bridge," Noah blurted. "We gotta help him." The woman, Dorothy Carter, Ethan would learn, went very still. She closed her eyes, lips moving in silent prayer. When she opened them again, the hardness had softened fractionally. "You try anything strange, I've got pepper spray and a direct line to God. Both will mess you up." "Yes." "Ma'am?" The apartment was tiny. Living room, kitchen, and bedroom all visible from where Ethan stood. A pull-out sofa bed dominated one wall. A tube TV from the early 2000s sat on a milk crate. But it was clean, orderly and filled with the smell of cinnamon and garlic. Dorothy ladled vegetable soup into mismatched bowls, added slices of toasted day-old bread. They sat at a small table with 3 chairs that didn't match. "You eat yet today?" she asked Ethan. He couldn't remember. "No, Mom." "Then eat." The soup was simple. Carrots, potatoes, chayote, but seasoned with something Ethan's expensive restaurants had never captured. Love, maybe, or just the taste of food prepared by hands that cared. "Noah says you were on the bridge," Dorothy said, watching him over her spoon. "Yes, Mom." "What stopped you besides my grandson?" Ethan met her eyes. "I don't know. He said something about lights, about not making the world darker." Dorothy's face softened completely. "That's what I told him after Rebecca died. His mama, my daughter. I'm sorry for your loss." "Sorry's cheap. Tell me who you are, really are." So Ethan told them. About Logan Pierce, about the fraud he didn't commit, about losing everything in 48 hours. Noah listened wide-eyed. Dorothy listened with the stillness of someone who'd heard plenty of lies and could spot truth. When he finished, she asked, "This Logan Pierce, where'd your daughter work, Noah?" "Mom worked at some tech company," Noah said, finishing his soup. "Pierce, something. She always talked about her boss." Ethan's spoon clattered into his bowl. "Pierce Technologies, part of Walker Pierce Holdings." "That's it." Noah's face lit up. "She said her boss was weird, though, always hiding papers in secret places." Ethan's pulse hammered in his ears. "Your mother worked directly with Logan Pierce." Dorothy's expression shifted to something dangerous. "For 3 years. Toward the end, Rebecca got strange, worried, said she'd found wrong things at work. I begged her to quit, but she said she needed to gather proof first." "Proof of what?" "Never told me details. Said it was dangerous for me to know." Dorothy stood, disappeared into the bedroom. She returned carrying a dusty cardboard box. 2 weeks before the accident, she brought home boxes of papers and little electronic things, put them in the closet, told me, "If something happens, Mama, keep these. Someday they'll matter." Ethan could barely breathe. "You still have them?" Dorothy's eyes narrowed. "Why? Because if your daughter documented Logan's crimes, it could prove I'm innocent, and it might prove that her accident—" He couldn't finish. "Wasn't an accident," Dorothy whispered. She sank back into her chair. "I never believed it was. Rebecca was the best driver I knew, careful to a fault. Mom wouldn't die in some stupid car crash," Noah said quietly. His small hands clenched into fists. "She was too smart." Dorothy stared at Rebecca's photograph on the wall, a beautiful woman in her early 30s, holding baby Noah, her smile bright enough to light the dim apartment. "The police said brake failure, mechanical defect, case closed in 3 days. Dorothy's voice shook. "Too fast, too clean, but what could I do? I'm just an old black woman in Tenderloin who listens to us." "Logan Pierce has enough money to buy silence," Ethan said. "Enough to make murder look like accident." "You're saying that man killed my Rebecca?" Dorothy's hands trembled. "Murdered my baby girl. I don't have proof yet. But if she was gathering evidence against him, if she knew about his crimes—" Noah made a sound, small, wounded. Dorothy pulled him into her arms. Ethan waited, watching this grandmother and grandson grieve, while traffic noise filtered through thin walls, and somewhere down the hall a baby cried. Finally, Dorothy rose. She retrieved the box from the closet, set it on the table with ceremonial care. Rebecca was paranoid those last months, kept saying she had to protect the truth. She left all this. Inside, folders, USB drives, a broken smartphone, a spiral notebook filled with neat handwriting, a sealed envelope. Ethan's hands shook as he reached for the first drive. "If this is what I think it is," he said, "we might be able to do more than prove my innocence. We might be able to bring down everyone involved." Dorothy nodded slowly. "Then we'd better get started, because if Logan Pierce killed my daughter, he's gonna answer for it." Noah wiped his eyes. "Will you stay with us to go through everything?" Ethan looked at these two people who'd lost everything, but still had space in their hearts for a stranger. "If you'll have me." "The couch pulls out," Dorothy said. "It's not the Ritz. It's perfect." As Noah cleared dishes and Dorothy made up the sofa bed, Ethan stared at Rebecca's box. Tomorrow they'd open it. Tomorrow they'd start the fight. Tonight he'd sleep under a stranger's roof, fed by a stranger's hands, saved by a stranger's child. And for the first time in 2 days, Ethan Walker had something he'd lost on that bridge. A reason to wake up tomorrow. Morning light filtered weak through curtains as Ethan woke to the smell of instant coffee and toast. His back ached from the lumpy sofa, but he'd slept better than he had in his California king bed. Dorothy had already left for her volunteer shift at the community clinic. Noah, still in pajamas, worked the kitchen like a tiny general. "Coffee's not great," he apologized, setting down a chipped mug. "But it's hot. It's perfect." They ate in comfortable silence, margarine on toast, the coffee bitter but honest. Then Noah dragged out his ancient Toshiba laptop, screen cracked at one corner, Windows 7 wheezing to life. "Tell me about being rich," Noah said as they waited. "Did you have a butler, like in the movies?" Ethan found himself answering honestly about the penthouses that felt empty. The friends who disappeared when the money did. The pressure that made his chest tight even on good days, the loneliness of being surrounded by people who wanted something from you. Noah listened with the gravity of someone twice his age. Sounds sad. It was, I just didn't realize it. The laptop finally cooperated. Ethan opened Rebecca's box with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. 4 USB drives labeled in neat handwriting. The transactions 2021-2022. Recovered emails, recordings, personal do not open. 2 folders of printed documents, the broken Samsung phone, a spiral notebook, a sealed envelope. He started with Transactions 2021-2022. Excel spreadsheets bloomed across the screen. Meticulous, damning, impossible to misunderstand. Offshore transfers to shell companies in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Panama, code names that barely disguised the players. Amounts that made Ethan's vision blur. $487 million siphoned over 3 years. Is that a lot? Noah asked, peering at the numbers. That's more than most people see in 100 lifetimes. Recovered emails contained 156 messages. Ethan clicked through them. Nausea building with each one. Logan discussing insider trades before public announcements. Logan coordinating with investors who profited from information they shouldn't have had. And then, buried in message 143, use EW's credentials for the offshore signatures. If this blows up, he takes the fall alone. EW, Ethan Walker. That's you. Noah's voice was small. Ethan couldn't speak. He nodded. The recordings folder held 8 MP3 files. Ethan clicked the first, a muffled voice. Logan's voice, unmistakable, filled the tiny apartment. She's digging too deep, has copies of everything. We need to handle this quietly. A second voice, gravelly, accented. Handle how firing her draws attention. She might leak before we can contain it. Accidents happen. Logan's tone was casual. Discussing murder like a quarterly report. Cars have mechanical failures. Make it look natural. Silence on the recording. Then, that'll cost extra. Pay whatever it takes, but I want it clean. The file ended. Noah's face had gone pale. He killed my mom. Ethan pulled the boy into his arms. They sat like that, both crying, while outside Tenderloin went about its business. Sirens, arguments, life continuing for people who didn't know that in apartment 3C. The proof of murder was playing through laptop speakers. When they could breathe again, Ethan opened the spiral notebook. Rebecca's handwriting was beautiful, organized, damning. Dates, times, descriptions of suspicious meetings, names of contacts, access codes she'd apparently discovered, and then an entry from 15 days before her death. Confronted LP today about the discrepancies. He got defensive, said I was imagining things, told me to focus on my job. I'm scared. I've made copies of everything and hidden them outside the office. If something happens to me, I hope someone finds this and gets justice. For Noah, for everyone he's hurt. Noah read over Ethan's shoulder, tears dropping onto the page. The sealed envelope contained a handwritten letter. To whoever finds this, my name is Rebecca Carter. If you're reading this, I'm probably dead. Logan Pierce has been defrauding investors for years through insider trading and offshore accounts. He uses forged signatures and credentials from his partner. Ethan Walker as protection. Ethan doesn't know anything. He's a victim too. All the proof is in the USB drives. Please take this to someone honest. Don't trust corporate lawyers or police. Logan has bought too many. Find an independent journalist or a federal prosecutor with no tech company ties. Get justice. Protect my son Noah. Rebecca Carter, 09/03/2023. 12 days before she died. The apartment felt too small suddenly. Ethan stood, paced the 3 steps the space allowed, sat back down. She knew, he whispered. She knew they'd kill her and she documented everything anyway. Because Mom was brave, Noah said fiercely. Braver than any rich person. Dorothy came home early. Clinic had run out of medications, closed for the day. She took one look at their faces and knew. Ethan played the recording. Dorothy didn't cry. Her face went hard as stone, rage simmering in her eyes. "That devil murdered my baby." "Yes, Mom. Then he's going to pay." "Not a threat, a promise." "We need help," Ethan said. "These files are explosive. But if I try to take them to the police alone, Logan will bury everything. He owns people at every level." Noah rummaged through his mother's old purse, kept in the closet like a shrine, found her day planner. Pages marked with notes. Mom had a list. Honest people. Trust if necessary. The list included 3 names: Grace Mitchell, journalist, KQAD; Daniel Wu, federal prosecutor, reportedly incorruptible; Judge Sarah Franklin, Grandma's friend, retired but connected. Dorothy's face lit up. Sarah, of course, she was Rebecca's confirmation sponsor. That woman doesn't bend for anybody, retired 2 years ago, but still knows everyone who matters. "I know Grace Mitchell by reputation," Ethan said. "Investigative journalist, took down a corrupt senator last year. She tried to interview me during the scandal." "And you refused?" Noah asked. "I was arrogant, thought I didn't need to explain myself to the media." Ethan's laugh was bitter. "Now I'll be begging her to listen." Dorothy set down her purse with finality. "Pride comes before the fall, Mr. Walker. You already fell. Now it's time for humility." They spent the afternoon at the public library. Using the community computer, Ethan composed an email to Grace Mitchell's public contact. "Miss Mitchell, I know I have no credibility, but I have proof that Logan Pierce murdered a woman to hide fraud. The same fraud I was blamed for. Proof includes recordings, documents, transactions. I know it's risky listening to an accused criminal, but I'm begging. Give me one chance to show you the truth. A life was taken. Others may be at risk. Respectfully, Ethan Walker." They sent it. Now came the hardest part, waiting. Dorothy made dinner, chicken and rice with the last of the month's budget. Noah said, "Grace, thank you God for this food and for bringing Uncle Ethan. Please help us get justice for Mom." "Amen, Uncle Ethan." The title settled around his shoulders like a responsibility he didn't deserve but would die trying to earn. That night, lying on the pull-out sofa, Ethan stared at the ceiling and thought about Rebecca Carter, a woman he'd barely known, a woman who'd tried to save him even as she documented her own death sentence. Tomorrow, maybe Grace Mitchell would respond. Tomorrow, maybe they'd have a chance. Tonight he had chocolate-scented breath from Noah's goodnight hug and Dorothy's quilt tucked around him and the sound of family in the next room. It wasn't much, but it was everything. Grace Mitchell arrived 7 minutes late to Café La Bohème, a deliberate tactic to observe her subject's nervousness. She'd learned early in her career that anxious people revealed more than comfortable ones. What she didn't expect was the child. Ethan Walker sat at a back corner table, wearing the same rumpled clothes from news footage, looking like he'd aged a decade in 2 weeks. Beside him, a skinny black kid nursed a hot chocolate. Eyes too old for his baby face, Grace dropped into the chair across from them without preamble. "You brought a kid to emotional manipulation. That's low, even for a desperate CEO." The boy spoke before Ethan could. "Nobody brought me. I came because you're Grace Mitchell, right? My mom used to watch your reports, said you weren't afraid of powerful people." Grace blinked. "Your mother watched me. Every night. She said you were a real journalist." The kid's voice carried weight that children shouldn't have to bear. "I'm Noah Carter. My mom was Rebecca Carter." Something shifted in Grace's chest, but she kept her expression neutral. "Rebecca Carter, why is that name familiar?" "Tenderloin resident, single mother, died in a car accident 14 months ago," Ethan said quietly. "Brake failure on Highway 101. Case closed in 3 days." Grace's memory clicked. Brief story, working mother, mechanical defect, no follow-up. She'd noted the speed of the investigation, but had been chasing bigger stories. "And you think it wasn't an accident?" "I can prove it wasn't." Ethan opened the library laptop. 3 minutes, that's all I'm asking." Grace checked her watch. "Clock's ticking." He showed her spreadsheets first. Offshore accounts, shell companies, money laundering so blatant it was almost insulting. Grace took notes. Her journalist's mind cataloging details. This is circumstantial, could be fabricated. Then listen to this. The recording played. Logan Pierce's voice. Grace had interviewed him twice. She knew that smooth tone, discussing accidents and mechanical failures and making things clean. The cafe's ambient noise faded. Grace's pen stopped mid-word. When was this recorded? Her voice came out sharper than intended. 3 weeks before Rebecca Carter's death, Noah said. Mom recorded it at work. She knew what was happening. Ethan showed her the handwritten letter, Rebecca's neat script outlining everything. Grace read it twice, her trained eye catching details, paper quality, ink consistency, the way trauma showed in slight variations of pressure. It felt authentic. She struggled for words. If this is real, this isn't just fraud, it's conspiracy, murder, it goes all the way up. I know. The cafe door chimed. A man in an expensive grey suit entered, mid-30s, handsome in a forgettable way. Moving with the confidence of someone used to deference, he spotted Ethan and froze. Vitor. Ethan stood. What are you doing here? Vitor Mendez approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. Grace recognized the name from her research. Walker Technologies' CFO stepped into Ethan's role after the scandal. Ethan? Vitor's voice carried Brazilian inflections. I didn't expect to see you. I bet. Enjoying my office. The bitterness in Ethan's tone could have stripped paint. It's not like that. Then what's it like, Vita? You working for the man who destroyed me, taking his money while I'm homeless? Grace watched the interaction. Noting Vita's discomfort, the guilt flickering across his features, Vita glanced at her, recognition dawning. Grace Mitchell! Back to Ethan, voice dropping. We need to talk, alone. Anything you say. You can say in front of her. Vita exhaled hard. Logan knows you're digging. He has people tracking you. Your email came from a public library in Tenderloin. He's already narrowed your location. He looked at Grace. He'll sue Keyd into oblivion if you publish anything without bulletproof proof. His lawyers are drafting papers now. How do you know this? Grace asked. Because I'm in the meetings. Vita's facade cracked slightly. Look, Ethan. I came to warn you as a friend. Drop this. Logan has judges, politicians, media contacts. You're one guy with documents from a dead secretary. You can't win. Noah's small voice cut through. She wasn't just a secretary. She was my mom, and she was braver than you'll ever be. Vita flinched. He looked at the boy, then at Ethan. I have a family, a mortgage. I can't throw everything away on principles. Then you've already chosen your side. Ethan said quietly. I'm trying to help you for old time's sake. Vita's eyes held genuine distress. But if you keep pushing, Logan won't just destroy your reputation. He'll bury you so deep no one will find the body. He left without another word. Grace watched him go, then turned back to Ethan. He's not wrong. Logan Pierce is connected at every level. If I investigate this and it goes sideways, my career is done. Cakehead gets sued for millions. I lose everything, she paused, looking at Noah's fierce little face, at Ethan's quiet desperation, at the documents that smelled like truth, even if they weren't verified. But, she continued, I remember Rebecca Carter's accident. Closed too fast, too neat, red flags everywhere. She met Ethan's eyes. If, and that's a massive if, this checks out, I'll publish, but I need full access, no secrets, and I control when it goes public. Agreed. Noah stuck out his small hand with unexpected formality. Deal, Grace almost smiled. How old are you? 8, but my grandma says I'm old inside. She shook his hand. Deal. Then to Ethan. Send everything to the secure email I'll provide. I'll start verification tomorrow. But understand, this could take weeks. And if Logan figures out what we're doing before we're ready, we'll be careful. Grace gathered her notes, mind already spinning with contacts to verify, sources to protect, angles to investigate. But something nagged at her, watching Ethan with Noah, the way they moved around each other, unconsciously protective. The casual intimacy of found family. Did you adopt him? She asked. Ethan glanced at Noah, something soft crossing his haggard face. I think it's more accurate to say he adopted me when I needed it most. Grace nodded slowly. This wasn't manipulation. It was genuine connection that shifted the calculation. Maybe Ethan Walker really was innocent. Maybe Logan Pierce really was a monster. Maybe, just maybe, she was about to break the biggest story of her career or destroy what was left of it trying. "Send me everything," she said, "and pray your friend is wrong about Logan's reach." But as she left the cafe, Grace had the unsettling feeling that Vita Mendes had been exactly right. 3 weeks later, the Carter apartment had transformed into an improvised war room. Papers covered every surface. Grace's forensic laptop dominated the kitchen table, running verification software, while Noah peppered her with questions about journalism. "Why do you need 3 sources for one fact?" he asked, watching her cross-reference documents. "Because 1 person can lie, 2 people can coincide by accident, but 3 people create a reliable pattern." Grace highlighted another discrepancy in Logan's offshore accounts. "It's like building a case with bricks instead of sand." Dorothy emerged from the bedroom, carrying a tray of fresh coffee and homemade cookies. Cinnamon and brown sugar, the apartment's perpetual scent. "You all need to eat something that isn't caffeine." They worked like this most nights. Grace arriving after her day job, staying until midnight. Ethan cross-referencing dates and transactions. Noah doing homework at their feet, occasionally offering observations that were surprisingly astute. Dorothy cooking, praying, holding them all together with faith and stubbornness. Proximity bred familiarity. Grace learned that Ethan made terrible jokes when tired, that he helped Noah with math homework with infinite patience, that he listened to Dorothy's long stories about Rebecca with genuine interest, never checking his phone because he no longer had one. Ethan learned that Grace bit her lower lip when concentrating, that she swore in Portuguese when frustrated, her grandmother's legacy, that her laugh, rare but genuine, transformed her entire face. One Tuesday night, reviewing spreadsheets side by side, their fingers brushed, reaching for the same document, neither pulled away immediately. Grace felt the heat of his shoulder against hers, smelled soap and cheap laundry detergent, and something underneath that was just him. "Were you different before?" she asked, not looking up. "At the peak," Ethan considered, "completely arrogant, obsessed with numbers, with winning. I saw people as assets or liabilities, never as just. In people, and now I know I wasted years focused on the wrong things, built an empire on sand." He finally met her eyes. "Turns out you can lose everything and discover you never had anything real to begin with." Grace felt something shift in her chest, dangerous and warm. "You're building something now, even if you don't see it." The moment stretched, leaned into possibility. Dorothy bustled in with a tray. "Thought you two might be hungry?" They sprang apart like teenagers caught kissing. Dorothy's knowing smile suggested she'd timed the interruption perfectly, but the tension remained, simmering under surface civility. Meanwhile, across the city, Logan Pierce's paranoia intensified. His source at an offshore bank mentioned a journalist asking questions. His hacker flagged suspicious search patterns around old Walker Pierce transactions in his glass office overlooking the bay. Logan summoned Marcus Hale. "Someone's digging," Logan said without preamble. "Find out who." Hale, who'd been noticing irregularities in Logan's accounts for weeks now, hired a private investigator, Rodrigo Silva. Ex-cop, effective if morally flexible, Silva was good. Within days, he'd identified Grace Mitchell, making regular visits to Tenderloin, photographed her entering a rundown building on Turk Street, cross-referenced the address with the library IP where Ethan's email originated. "Grace Mitchell, Cakehead," Silva reported, "visiting apartment 3C repeatedly, coincides with where Walker's been hiding." Logan's smile was predatory. "Options, legal route, sue Mitchell and K-Ed preemptively for defamation, threaten them into silence." Hale kept his voice neutral. "Or we could complicate her sources, plant contradictory evidence." "How messy? As messy as you're willing to pay for." Logan stared out at the city he'd conquered through careful ruthlessness. Start with legal threats if that doesn't work. He let the sentence hang, pregnant with implication. Hale left feeling vaguely nauseated. He'd defended plenty of guilty clients. That was the job. But Logan's casual discussion of obstruction, of ruining lives, was starting to feel less like legal strategy and more like active complicity in something darker. At Tenderloin Elementary, Noah's world collapsed in microcosm. 3 boys cornered him after school. Tyler, the ringleader, entitled and mean. Jake and Marcus, followers looking for approval. Tyler shoved Noah against the chain-link fence. "Your uncle is a thief," Tyler sneered. "My dad says he stole millions. What's that make you?" "An accomplice." "Ethan's innocent," Noah said, fear and fury mixing in his chest. "Sure he is. That's why he's hiding in your dump apartment instead of his mansion," Tyler laughed. Loser taking in loser. The punch surprised everyone, especially Noah. His small fist connected with Tyler's nose. A burst of red, a shriek of pain. Tyler crumpled, crying. Teachers came running. Dorothy got called to the principal's office. Principal Pamela Rodriguez, a stern Latina woman in her 50s, looked tired. "Mrs. Carter, Noah has never been violent, but this is unacceptable." "What did they say to provoke him?" Dorothy's voice could have cut steel. "Apparently it was about the man living with you. That man is innocent. He's teaching my grandson about strength and integrity. I understand your situation is difficult, but—" "No." Dorothy stood, dignity radiating from every inch of her frame. "You don't understand. We lost Rebecca, nearly lost Noah to grief, Mr. Walker appeared like an answer to prayer. I will not let my grandson be ashamed of showing loyalty." She took Noah's hand. They left on the bus home. Noah cried, "I'm sorry, Grandma. I know violence is wrong." Dorothy pulled him close. "Sometimes, baby, fighting is necessary. Jesus turned over tables in the temple when he had to." They arrived home to find Ethan seeing Noah's bruised knuckles. "What happened?" Noah explained through tears. Ethan knelt eye level with the boy. "This is my fault. I brought shame on you." "No!" Noah's vehemence shocked them all. "They're wrong. You're the best person I know." Grace watched from the doorway, something breaking and reforming in her chest. That evening brought a small victory. Grace's contact at the SEC confirmed 3 shell companies listed in Rebecca's documents existed, with Logan Pierce as hidden beneficiary. "This validates her spreadsheets," Grace said, excitement lighting her features. Rebecca wasn't fabricating. She was documenting facts. Dorothy baked a celebratory cake, carrot, Rebecca's favorite recipe. Noah lit a candle, for Mom helping us from heaven. They were a family, Ethan realized, improbable, improvised, but real. That night, nightmares came. Ethan saw Rebecca driving, brakes failing, Logan laughing. He woke at 3:17 a.m. screaming Grace, asleep on the couch after working late. Rushed to him. Hey, you're okay, just a dream. I see her dying every night and I can't save her." Grace cupped his face. "You can't save who's already gone, but you can honor her memory with justice." Their faces were inches apart, breath mingling, heart rate synchronized. Grace closed the distance. The kiss was soft at first, question and answer. Then it deepened. Weeks of tension and fear and hope pouring between them. Ethan's hands found her waist. Grace's fingers threaded through his hair. They broke apart, breathing hard. "This complicates things," Grace whispered. "I know. We shouldn't. I know." Neither moved away. They kissed again, hunger and need and the desperate human drive for connection overwhelming logic. In the bedroom, Dorothy smiled into the darkness and murmured a prayer of thanksgiving. Everything shattered on a Thursday morning. FBI agents hit the apartment at 6 a.m. Battering ram, shouted commands, Dorothy's scream of shock. Noah scrambled from his bed, terrified. Ethan barely had time to grab jeans before cuffs circled his wrists. "What's happening?" Dorothy demanded, her voice shaking. "Search warrant," the lead agent said, not unkindly. "Anonymous tip about stolen proprietary documents and obstruction of justice. They took everything. Laptop, USB drives, Rebecca's notebooks, the handwritten letter. Loaded it all into evidence boxes. while Dorothy clutched Noah and prayed in Spanish. At KKED headquarters, Grace got the call from her editor, Patricia Gomes. "My office now." Patricia's expression was granite. "We're being sued for defamation. Logan Pierce's lawyers filed this morning, $50 million, claiming we're conspiring with a criminal to fabricate evidence." "You're off the story, effective immediately. But the evidence is real. I verified evidence that conveniently appeared after Walker was accused. Evidence now flagged by the FBI as potentially tampered." Patricia's face softened fractionally. "Grace, I want to believe you, but the company can't afford this fight. We're done." Grace felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "You're killing the story. I'm protecting the station. Clear your desk of anything related to Walker or Pierce." At the police station, Ethan sat in an interview room for 6 hours. They showed him metadata, supposedly proving he'd altered documents, forged timestamps, fabricated emails. Logan had prepared well. They released him on insufficient evidence to hold, but the damage was done. Every news station ran updates. Disgraced CEO attempts to fabricate exculpatory evidence. Worse, the landlord evicted Dorothy. Can't have criminals operating out of my building. Liability issue by afternoon. Dorothy and Noah were packing their lives into garbage bags. Headed for a shelter, Ethan stood in the demolished apartment, evidence tape across doorways, and felt despair crush him like physical weight. That evening, Grace found him outside the building. Her eyes were red, face drawn. "My editor killed the story, threatened to fire me if I keep investigating." Ethan nodded numbly, expected this. "I don't know if I can risk my career," Grace continued, voice breaking. "Everything I've built, my credibility, my future, it's all on the line. I understand." "Do you?" The words erupted. "Because I'm not sure I do. I believed you, Ethan. I was falling for you. And now I don't know if you're a victim or if I'm just another idiot you manipulated." Each word was a knife between ribs. "Grace, please." "No, I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't." She walked away. Ethan watched her go, heard her car start, saw her taillights disappear into San Francisco traffic. He sank onto the curb, head in hands. 2 weeks later, Noah stopped selling chocolates. He and Dorothy lived in a cramped shelter, sharing a room with 3 other families. Dorothy, who'd been strong through Rebecca's death and every hardship since, began showing cracks, exhaustion in her eyes, prayers that sounded more desperate than faithful. Ethan bounced between homeless shelters, each night a struggle to find a bed, to avoid violence, to remember he'd once been worth billions. But something was shifting on the other side. Logan Pierce, publicly triumphant, privately began to fracture. His lead attorney, Marcus Hale, kept asking uncomfortable questions about certain transactions. An internal audit revealed discrepancies Logan couldn't easily explain. And Vita Mendes, drowning in guilt, couldn't sleep, couldn't meet his daughter's eyes, kept remembering Ethan's words, "You've already chosen your side." One night, Vita did something either brave or stupid. He burned copies of everything Logan had ordered destroyed. The original, unaltered documents Rebecca had gathered, mailed them anonymously to Grace Mitchell with a note. Rebecca Carter was right. Logan killed her. He'll kill others if not stopped. Here's the real proof. A friend. Grace received the package at home, hands shaking as she opened it. Inside, a USB drive and documentation she'd never seen. Original files, not the tampered versions the FBI had seized. She plugged in the drive, played the audio file, Logan's voice clear and damning. "Rebecca knows too much. The accident needs to happen this week. Make it clean, I don't care what it costs." A second voice responding. "It'll look natural, brake lines are easy." Logan again. "And Walker, he's signing everything. His credentials, his signatures. He won't know until it's too late." The recording continued for 8 minutes. Detailed discussion of murder, fraud, frame-up. Grace covered her mouth, horror and vindication warring in her chest. All this time, Ethan had been telling the truth. Meanwhile, Dorothy, exhausted but faithful, reached out to an old friend, retired Judge Sarah Franklin, who'd been Rebecca's godmother. They met at a diner, Dorothy bringing what little documentation hadn't been seized. "Sarah, I need help. That man killed my Rebecca, and everyone's protecting him because he's rich." Judge Franklin, a black woman in her 70s with steel in her spine and a reputation for incorruptibility, listened, took notes, made calls. The wheels of real justice began finally to turn, but Ethan, Grace, Dorothy, and Noah didn't know it yet. They only knew loss, separation, the grinding weight of fighting giants with nothing but truth. In his shelter bed, Ethan stared at water-stained ceiling and thought about the bridge, about how close he'd come, about how Noah's small hand had pulled him back. He wasn't going to jump again. But God, it hurt to keep standing. The shelter smelled like institutional disinfectant and desperation. Ethan lay on a cot between a man withdrawing from heroin and another who coughed wetly through the night. The fluorescent lights never fully shut off. Someone was always crying or arguing or praying. This was Rock Bottom's basement. He'd tried calling Grace 17 times. All went to voicemail. Eventually, her number blocked him. 3 weeks into shelter life, Ethan returned from a fruitless job search to find a commotion. A man had overdosed in the bathroom. Paramedics worked while shelter staff ushered everyone outside. Ethan stood on the cold sidewalk and wondered clinically if dying might be easier than this endless grinding poverty. Then he saw them across the street, Dorothy and Noah at a food bank, loading donated groceries into a cart. Noah looked thinner. Dorothy moved like someone decades older than her 68 years. They were suffering because of him. Ethan turned away before they could see him and walked until his feet blistered, until San Francisco's hills burned his legs, until he somehow ended up back at the Golden Gate Bridge. Different time, same desperation. He stood at the railing, not climbing this time, just staring at water that promised peace. "Don't see you as the quitting type," Ethan spun. An elderly black man stood there, slight build, sharp eyes, clerical collar visible under his jacket. "Do I know you?" Ethan asked. "No, but I know men on edges. Been working suicide prevention here 30 years. The man extended his hand. "Father Marcus Webb, walk with me." Ethan had nowhere else to be. They walked. Father Webb talked about his own bottom. Alcoholism. Lost family night. He decided between a bullet and God. Chose God because I was too tired to pull the trigger. Sometimes surrender's just exhaustion wearing a holy mask. "I don't know how to keep going," Ethan admitted. "Everything I touch destroys itself. Then stop touching with the same hands. Build new ones." The words settled strange in Ethan's chest. Across the city, Grace Mitchell was having her own crisis. She'd spent 2 weeks away from the story, trying to convince herself she'd made the right choice. Patricia had been relieved. Grace's other investigations progressed, but she couldn't sleep, couldn't stop hearing Logan's voice on that recording. Couldn't forget Noah's fierce defense of his Uncle Ethan. The anonymous package haunted her, real, unaltered proof, if she verified it independently, confirmed authenticity through her own sources. She could publish on her personal blog, bypass Cakehead entirely, risk everything on her own terms. The decision terrified her and thrilled her. This was why she'd become a journalist, to tell truths that mattered. Consequences be damned. Grace started making calls. At a grey government office, Marcus Hale sat across from his own reflection in the bathroom mirror. He looked like his father. Same weak chin, same tendency toward moral compromise for comfort's sake. His father had died, broke and despised. Hale pulled out his phone, called the FBI field office, asked to speak with someone about corporate fraud. He was done protecting monsters. Dorothy Carter. Meanwhile, met Judge Sarah Franklin at a quiet church. Sarah brought a lawyer, David Chen, specialist in civil rights cases, pro bono champion. "Tell me everything," Chen said, recording on his phone. Dorothy told him about Rebecca's death, the suspicious speed of investigation, the documents, Logan's threats, the FBI raid that felt orchestrated, a grandmother and child made homeless for seeking truth. Jen's expression hardened. "This is actionable. We can file civil suit, force discovery, expose everything." "How long will it take?" Dorothy asked. "Months, maybe a year." We don't have a year. That boy is wasting away in a shelter. Ethan's spirit is breaking. Rebecca's murderer is free. Judge Franklin leaned forward. Then we move faster. I'll make calls. Federal prosecutor I trust. Woman who owes me favors. We build the case from multiple angles until it's bulletproof. For the first time in weeks, Dorothy felt something like hope. Noah, sitting in the church pew drawing in a notebook, had been listening. His pictures showed bridges, dozens of them, connecting separated shores that night. Grace published on Medium, The Real Criminal, How Logan Pierce Murdered to Hide Fraud, an investigation. The post detailed everything. Rebecca's documentation, the authentic recordings, hosting the audio file, the shell companies verified independently, the frame-up of Ethan Walker, Logan's history of manipulation. She cited sources, provided evidence, wrote with the precision of someone who knew this would define her career one way or another. Posted at 11:47 p.m. By 6 a.m., it had 47,000 shares. By noon, mainstream media couldn't ignore it. CNN, MSNBC, even Fox News picked up the story. Dr. Logan Pierce trended worldwide. Justice for Rebecca gained momentum. Patricia called Grace furious. You just committed career suicide. Maybe, Grace said, but I'm sleeping tonight. At FBI headquarters, Agent Jennifer Martinez read the article 3 times, then pulled the Walker case file, cross-referenced with the anonymous documents Marcus Hale had delivered 2 days earlier. The pieces fit too perfectly to ignore. She called her supervisor. We need to reopen Walker Pierce. All of it. Logan Pierce received the news during a massage at his Napa Valley spa. His lawyer's panicked call. The story's everywhere. FBI's reopening everything. We need to get ahead of this. Logan's first instinct, run. He called his pilot. Prep the jet. Cayman Islands now. But he'd underestimated how fast the system moves when properly motivated. Federal agents arrived at his estate in Napa before he could leave, surrounded the private airstrip, walked him out in handcuffs while news helicopters circled overhead. Logan Pierce, genius CEO, architect of billion-dollar fraud, screamed into cameras, "You don't understand. I built that company. Walker was just a figurehead. I deserve everything I took." The tantrum of a child caught stealing. Broadcast live to millions. Marcus Hale, watching from his office, felt his phone buzz. Text from his wife, "I'm proud of you." He'd turned state's evidence, delivered everything. Documents, recordings, testimony about the murder conspiracy. In exchange, immunity, witness protection, a chance to rebuild something like integrity. Vitor Mendez saw the arrest on television and wept with relief, then called his priest to schedule confession. Grace received a call from Ethan's old therapist, Dr. Helena Soares, who'd been tracking the case. "Is he safe? I haven't been able to reach him." "I don't know where he is," Grace admitted, guilt crushing her chest. She'd abandoned him at his lowest point, doubted him when he needed faith, loved him and left him because of fear. Grace grabbed her keys. She had to find him, had to tell him she was sorry, had to tell him she believed. Grace found Ethan 3 days after Logan's arrest, sleeping in Golden Gate Park under newspapers. He'd grown a beard, lost 15 pounds, looked like a different person. Or maybe the same person, stripped to essentials. She knelt beside him, careful not to startle Ethan. He opened his eyes, dull, exhausted, then clearing with recognition and something that might have been pain. "You wrote the story," he said, not quite a question. "I should have written it weeks ago. I should have believed you." Grace's voice cracked. "I'm sorry, God. Ethan, I'm so sorry. You told the truth, and I abandoned you when you needed someone most." Ethan sat up slowly. People jogged past, oblivious to reconciliation happening on cold ground. "I don't blame you," he said. "You did what you had to protect yourself." "That's not good enough." Tears tracked down Grace's face. "I fell in love with you, then let fear make me cruel. That's unforgivable." "Grace, let me finish." She took his hands, rough now, calloused from labor, nothing like the executive hands she'd first met. "I love you. I loved you then, I love you now, and I'm asking if you can forgive me for being human and scared and wrong." Ethan pulled her into his arms. They held each other while the city woke around them, while dawn broke over the bay, while two people who'd lost everything found each other again. "There's nothing to forgive," Ethan whispered into her hair. "You came back. That's what matters." They went to the shelter where Dorothy and Noah were staying. The reunion was tears and laughter, and Noah refusing to let go of Uncle Ethan for 20 minutes. "Logan's in jail," Grace told them. "FBI's building a murder case. Your evidence, Dorothy. Rebecca's documentation. It's all being used. She's going to get justice." Dorothy pressed her face into her hands and wept. 30 years of grief and hope and exhausted faith finally releasing, the legal machinery ground into motion. Federal prosecutors, armed with Rebecca's files, Hale's testimony, and Grace's investigation, built an airtight case. Logan Pierce faced charges: first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, securities fraud, money laundering. Obstruction of justice. His empire crumbled. Walker Technologies' stock plummeted. Investors sued. Board members resigned. The name Pierce became synonymous with corruption. Ethan's charges were dropped. Formal apology issued, restitution ordered. He'd received compensation for damages, though nothing compared to what he'd lost. He didn't care about the money. 3 months after Logan's arrest, they gathered in Judge Sarah Franklin's chambers for the civil settlement. Logan's seized assets would be distributed. Victims first, then Rebecca's estate. Noah, now 9 years old, wore his best clothes, donated from a church. Dorothy held his hand. "Rebecca Carter was murdered to hide fraud," Judge Franklin said, her voice carrying decades of judicial authority. "No amount of money restores a life, but these funds ensure her son's future and honor her courage." Noah received a trust fund. Enough for college, for stability, for the future Rebecca had wanted him to have. Dorothy received enough to buy a small house. Not in Pacific Heights, in the Sunset District. 3 bedrooms, a garden. And Ethan received something else. Closure, vindication, the knowledge that Rebecca's sacrifice hadn't been meaningless. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Grace stood beside Ethan, Noah between them, Dorothy strong and proud. "Mr. Walker, how do you feel about Logan Pierce's conviction?" someone shouted. Ethan looked at the family he'd found in his darkest hour. "I feel grateful, not for what I got back, but for what I found. These people saved my life. Rebecca Carter saved my reputation even after death. That kind of courage, that kind of love, it's worth more than any empire. Will you rebuild Walker Technologies?" "No," the answer came easily. "I'm building something else, something that matters." 1 week later, the press conference, Ethan Walker announces the New Light Foundation, non-profit dedicated to helping families who've lost everything. Focus areas: wrongful convictions, victims of corporate fraud, single-parent households. First project, renovating Tenderloin Community Center. Second, scholarship fund named for Rebecca Carter. Grace, sitting in the front row, watched the man she loved explain his mission and felt her heart might burst. That evening, in Dorothy's new kitchen, still half unpacked, smelling like fresh paint, they celebrated. Noah made spaghetti, his specialty, learned from YouTube. Dorothy baked her carrot cake. Grace brought wine. Ethan brought flowers. Bodega bouquet, perfect in its imperfection, after Noah went to bed. The 3 adults sat on the back porch. City lights sparkled below. "I keep thinking about Rebecca," Dorothy said softly, "about how she'd feel knowing her documents brought down that monster." "She'd be proud of Noah," Ethan said. "Of how brave he is. She'd be grateful to you," Dorothy countered, "for giving her death meaning." Grace laced her fingers through Ethan's. "She'd probably just be glad we're all still fighting, that we didn't let Logan win." They sat in comfortable silence, 3 people bound by tragedy and choice, by loss and love, by the strange mercy of finding family when you least expect it. Inside, Noah slept with his mother's photograph on the nightstand and a smile on his face, dreaming of bridges connecting impossible distances. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Grace covered it daily, her articles blending investigative journalism with something raw, testimony to truth's cost and value. Logan Pierce's defense collapsed under evidence weight. Rebecca's documents, authenticated by 3 independent forensic analysts, Hale's testimony, corroborated by bank records and emails, the recording of Logan ordering murder, audio analysis confirming authenticity most damning, the mechanic who'd sabotaged Rebecca's car, granted immunity for testifying. He described Logan's intermediary, the payment in cryptocurrency, the specific instruction to make brake failure look gradual on the stand. Logan tried arrogance first. "This is persecution. I built a company worth billions. Walker was dead weight. I did what was necessary." His own words hung him. The jury deliberated 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Outside the courthouse, Noah stood with Dorothy, Grace, and Ethan. News cameras captured his small face as the verdict was read. "Is it over?" he asked. "Yes, baby," Dorothy said. "Your mama got justice." Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Life without parole for murder, consecutive sentences for fraud. Logan Pierce would die in prison. Vito Mendez attended the sentencing. Afterward, he approached Ethan hesitantly. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," Vito said. "I chose safety over integrity. I was a coward." Ethan studied his former friend, the guilt etched in new lines around his eyes, the humility replacing arrogance. "Everyone makes choices," Ethan said finally. "But you came through eventually, sent Grace the evidence that mattered. Does that balance the scales?" "I don't keep scales anymore," Ethan extended his hand. "But if you want to do better, the New Light Foundation could use a financial officer. Someone who understands how the system breaks people." Vita's eyes filled. "You'd trust me." "Grace does, Dorothy does, that's enough for me." He paused. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Vita. I got mine on a bridge from an 8-year-old kid. Maybe I can pass that forward." They shook hands, beginning of redemption, fragile but real. 6 months later, the New Light Foundation opened its doors in a renovated Tenderloin building, 1st floor. Legal aid clinic, 2nd floor. Job training center, 3rd floor. Temporary housing for families fighting wrongful convictions. Dorothy ran the community outreach program, her fierce faith and practical wisdom guiding families through bureaucratic mazes. Noah, now thriving in private school on Rebecca's legacy scholarship, volunteered after classes, helping younger kids with homework, sharing his story of loss and recovery. Grace took a position as communications director, using journalism skills to amplify voices the system ignored. Her blog posts about the foundation's work went viral regularly, bringing donations and volunteers, and Ethan directed it all. No longer the CEO chasing profits, but a man channeling wealth toward purpose. He lived modestly, 1-bedroom apartment in the Sunset, walking distance from Dorothy's house, drove a used Honda, wore jeans instead of suits, looked happier than he ever had in penthouses one Saturday. They all returned to the Golden Gate Bridge, Noah's idea. We should face the place where everything started. They walked to the spot where Ethan had climbed the rail, where Noah had offered chocolate and wisdom beyond his years. "Do you still think about jumping?" Noah asked, no longer the traumatized 8-year-old, but a thoughtful kid approaching 10. Ethan knelt, meeting his eyes. "No, you taught me something important. Noah, when life breaks us, sometimes it's not destruction. Sometimes it's making space for light to get in." "Mum's light," Noah said softly. "Yes, and yours, and Dorothy's, and Grace's." Ethan ruffled his hair. "You saved my life that day, but it turned out I needed saving from more than just jumping. I needed saving from the person I'd been." Grace stepped close, slipping her hand into Ethan's engagement ring, catching sunset light. Simple gold band. No ostentation, chosen together at an antique shop in the Mission. "What happens now?" Noah asked. "With you two?" Grace and Ethan exchanged glances, smiling. "Now we build," Grace said. "A life together. A family. You're gonna have kids." Noah's face lit up. "Eventually, but you'll always be our first." Ethan said, "the one who started everything." Dorothy pulled them all into a hug. Grandmother, orphaned grandson, redeemed billionaire, crusading journalist, improbable family forged in crisis, tempered in love. As sun set over the bay, painting the bridge golden, a jogger passed and smiled at them. Tourists took selfies. The world continued its indifferent spin, but on that spot where Ethan Walker had almost ended his story, 5 people stood together, living proof that darkness doesn't have final say, that courage comes in unexpected sizes, that justice, though slow, can still arrive, that redemption isn't about deserving, but about choosing every day to build something better than what broke. Noah pulled out a chocolate bar, Hershey's of course, and broke it into pieces. "For Mom," he said, placing one piece on the railing. "Thanks for being brave." They each took a piece, ate together in sweet silence. The chocolate tasted like endings and beginnings, like grief and hope, like the complicated flavor of being human and broken and somehow impossibly whole, 2 years after Logan Pierce's conviction. The New Light Foundation Gala filled a renovated warehouse in the Mission District. 500 attendees, donors, volunteers, families the foundation had helped, journalists documenting the organization's growing impact. Ethan stood at the podium, no longer comfortable in the tuxedo Grace had insisted he wear, but at ease with public speaking in ways his younger self never managed. "2 years ago, I stood on the Golden Gate Bridge ready to end my life," he began. The room went silent. I'd lost everything I thought mattered: wealth, status, reputation. What I didn't know was that I'd never had anything real to lose. I'd built an empire on sand, surrounded myself with people who wanted access, not connection. He found Noah in the crowd, almost 12 now, shooting up in height, smiles still capable of lighting entire rooms. Beside him, Dorothy in her church finest, tears already streaming. Grace, in the front row, recording on her phone, mouthing, "You're doing great." A child stopped me that day, Noah Carter, 8 years old, selling chocolate bars to help his grandmother with rent. His mother, Rebecca Carter, had been murdered for trying to expose the fraud that destroyed my life. But Noah didn't know any of that yet. He just knew a stranger needed help. Ethan paused, collecting himself. Noah offered me his last chocolate bar, his dinner, and told me something his grandmother had taught him, that every life is a light, and if we turn ours off, the world gets darker for everyone. Applause rippled through the room. Rebecca Carter documented the crimes that eventually brought down Logan Pierce. She died for that courage, but her light didn't go out. It just changed forms. It shines through Noah, through Dorothy's faith, through the families we help here, through every person who chooses truth over convenience, integrity over profit, love over fear. He gestured to the screens behind him, showing before and after photos. Families reunited after wrongful convictions overturned, single parents receiving job training and housing, children attending college on Rebecca Carter Memorial Scholarships. This foundation exists because people believed in second chances, because Grace Mitchell risked her career publishing truth, because Marcus Hale chose conscience over complicity, because Vito Mendez, now our CFO, decided it wasn't too late to do the right thing. Vito, seated near the back, wiped his eyes. "We've helped 247 families this year, overturned 6 wrongful convictions, provided housing for 38 families, funded 42 college scholarships. But the number that matters most to me is one: Noah Carter, the boy who saved my life and taught me what life is actually for." Standing ovation. Ethan stepped from the podium, but the MC caught his sleeve. "Mr. Walker, we have a surprise." The lights dimmed. A video played. Testimonials from families the foundation had helped. A wrongfully convicted man, freed after New Light lawyers took his case. A single mother who'd received housing and job training, now running her own catering business. A teenager on a Rebecca Carter scholarship, studying engineering at Stanford. Each person ended their testimonial the same way: "Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for being light. When lights came up, Ethan couldn't speak. Grace joined him on stage, taking his hand. "You okay?" she whispered. "More than okay. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." The after-party flowed into the courtyard. Dorothy cornered Ethan near the dessert table. "Rebecca would be proud," she said simply. "I hope so." "Don't hope, no." Dorothy squeezed his arm. "My baby girl died protecting truth. You're living that truth every day. That's the best memorial anyone could ask for." Noah bounded over, Grace trailing behind with champagne flutes. "Uncle Ethan, there's a reporter who wants to ask about the expansion plans, and Vita says 3 new donors committed tonight. And—" He paused, suddenly shy. "Can I make a toast?" "Of course." They gathered close. Immediate family and extended foundation family, a circle of people bound by shared purpose. Noah raised his juice glass. "To my mom, who was the bravest person I never got to know long enough. To Grandma, who taught me about light. To Uncle Ethan, who proved you can lose everything and still win. To Aunt Grace, who risked everything for truth. And to everyone here who believes people deserve second chances. Here, here." Glasses clinked. Grace leaned into Ethan's shoulder. "Happy," she murmured. "Unbelievably. Even without the billions. The penthouse, the empire. Especially without them, turns out I was building the wrong thing for the wrong reasons my whole life. This—" He gestured at the celebration, at Noah laughing with other kids, at Dorothy holding court with donors, at Vita explaining financial transparency with evangelical fervor. "This is what I was supposed to build." Later, as the party wound down, the core 5 gathered on the rooftop. Ethan, Grace, Noah, Dorothy, and Vita. City lights sparkled below. The same view that had seemed so hollow from penthouse heights, but felt sacred from here. "Remember when we all fit in that tiny apartment?" Noah asked. "Working on laptops, eating Grandma's soup." "I remember thinking we couldn't possibly win," Grace said. "That Logan was too powerful, too connected. But we did win," Dorothy said firmly, "because we had something he didn't. Truth, and each other, and faith that light overcomes darkness eventually. Sometimes it takes longer than we want," Vitor added quietly, "and sometimes we fail before we succeed. But giving up is the only guaranteed loss." They stood in companionable silence. Watching San Francisco breathe beneath them, Ethan thought about the man he'd been, so certain of his worth, measured in dollars and influence, so blind to what actually mattered, that man would have scorned this moment, would have seen failure in the loss of empire, but that man had been a ghost, haunting a life not really lived. This man, scarred, humbled, grateful, was finally awake. "Thank you," he said to all of them, "for saving me, for believing in me, for showing me what love actually looks like." Noah grabbed his hand. "You saved yourself, Uncle Ethan. We just didn't let you give up before you got there." Grace kissed his cheek. Dorothy squeezed his shoulder. Vita nodded with understanding, born from his own redemption, and in that moment, on that roof, surrounded by people who'd chosen him, when he had nothing to offer but brokenness, Ethan Walker understood the truth Noah had told him 2 years ago on a bridge. When life breaks us, it's not always destruction. Sometimes it's just making space for light to get in. If this story moved you, consider supporting organizations that help wrongfully convicted individuals and families facing injustice. Have you ever witnessed someone transform tragedy into purpose? Share your thoughts below. Sometimes the people who save us are the ones we'd never expect, and sometimes we're called to be that unexpected light for someone else.